So, just a quick intro here to the next project that we're going to undertake. I'm not sure you're familiar with these, but this is a Toro Workmaster. And back in 1974, back in the 1970s, Toro had an agreement with a company in the Twin Cities that made these particular utility vehicles for them called the Toro Workmaster. So from 1961 to 1974, there was a company in the cities called Good something. The name slips my mind now. But they made them for Toro, and then at some point in 74 or 78, Toro started building them in-house. So this would be, so if I, looking at the pictures on Toro's website, this would be the one that Toro made. And so from 1974 to 1990, Toro made this in-house. And the way you differentiate the original Workmaster, the way you determine the original Workmaster that was made by the other company is there's the original one had a wheel in the center in the front, and then the steering wheel was like a pipe, a U-shaped bent pipe. And then when Toro took it over later on, they put on a steering wheel like this. So this is this particular model started the whole utility vehicle era for Toro themselves. And if you look at the new ones they make, the payload and cargo bed payload capacity is still literally the same as a Workman. In 1990, they introduced the Workman, which was a four-wheel model that Toro built in-house. And the payload on those are still the same as these, basically 1,200 pounds or so of payload in the back, and about that same amount, 1,200 pounds of towing capabilities. And that's what this is. This is literally the same. It's got a real axle in the back. These came with a cast iron K-series Kohler engine. That's what powered these. Was a 12 or a 14 horse Kohler K-series engine, single cylinder. So this particular one here belongs to a friend of mine that he wants me to restore for him. The seat looks like they're going to have to be replaced with something else. These are off of like a boat, like a fishing boat. The back folds down. Looks like the dog got the back all chewed up on it. Now, what he wants to do on this, he wants to fix the brakes. So under the hood, there's a mat under the hood up front. I took the bolts out. I had this off. This is just laying on there now. I had the hood off, and the brakes, you can see the master cylinder under the hood is connected to the brake pedal, but it's either seized, rusted up, corroded, but basically the brake pedal just hits a dead end. It is not doing anything. Now, I did look up the master cylinder, and if I can't clean it up, you can actually get a seal kit and rebuild the master cylinder, which is something I will look at doing. I'll see how rusted it is on the inside. And I do see that some of the aftermarket auto parts make a very similar master cylinder. That's kind of a universal one that was used in a lot of different vehicles at that time. And so I do have options if I can't rebuild this one. And I do see that Toro still makes a ton of parts for these. So there's a lot of the parts still available for them from Toro. Now the engine sits under the seat. So if you flip the seat up, the engine is underneath. It has only one wheel in the center, as you can see. But what it does is it makes it so that it literally turns sideways. It's almost zero turn capable steering with that center wheel. It's very stable. I'm impressed. But I mean, for the era, the only downside of this particular model that I can see is that the box doesn't dump. Like the Workman that came after it, they all have a dumpable box, but back then these did not have a dumpable box. So it's a very sturdy frame. It's got a commercial drivetrain. The engine, let's see, walk around here. I'm using a gimbal stick here on my phone. So I try walking around and not jerking you around too much. And Still getting used to using a gimbal. I normally just use my phone. So what you have, let's see if I can walk up to it here. So what you have is a single pedal for the brake. You have a single pedal for the brake here, but you see it's coming to a dead stop when it hits the master cylinder. So I got to check out the master cylinder, see if the lines are empty. And so we got to go through the brakes. And then this is your hydrostatic pedal. See next to it? So you press it forward, it goes forward. You press it in the back, it goes backwards. So it's hydrostatic drive. So it's infinite. And the handbrake also wants me to fix the handbrake. Handbrake doesn't look like it's doing anything. So if you look at the controls, the dash and stuff, it's very much from that era, you know, the 60s and 70s, 80s. You know, old-fashioned gauges. But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot to work with here as far as what's here. So we'll go through it. We'll start with the brakes, and we'll get the brakes all working. And then from the brakes, we'll go to, what was after the brakes? We'll do the handbrake too, after we get the brakes working. And then we're going to clean up some of the wiring. Let's see if I can show you the underneath. It's even got a ball hitch on the back for towing a trailer. Oh man, the grass is soggy. So there you can see that it's got leaf springs. It's got a solid axle on leaf springs. So yeah, it's built really sturdy. It's got a tailgate that you can flip down. Nice and heavy duty. So the tires are holding air. The tires are staying, tires are keeping their pressure. So basically we'll go through it and we'll get everything fixed up on it for them. So being that this is hydrostatic, they have a cooling fan in here for cooling the hydraulics from the hydrostatic transmission. I'll show you the dash from this side too. So yeah, I would start with the least invasive and just make your way through and go through all the various systems and get it all fixed up. So I'm going to flip the seats down. I'm going to show you what the previous owner repowered it from the original Kohler engine. He repowered it to a Honda. So he repowered it. Let's go to, let's see, get the seats flip down, and then we can flip up the seat bottom like that. So he repowered it with a 20 horse V-twin Honda. So he took out the single cylinder Kohler, the cast iron single cylinder Kohler, and he repowered it with this. So it's leaking oil majorly. So we're going to pull the engine. We're going to get all the oil leaks fixed on it. We'll make sure that it doesn't, if it needs no rings, we're going to re-ring it, you know, hone it and re-ring it, and then we'll put the engine back in. They actually power this. There's a shaft. So this is a horizontal shaft engine. There's a shaft going from the engine to the hydrostatic pump on the rear axle. So this is built for long-term use. This is built for longevity. I mean, this is your typical high-end Toro. I mean, this is made for commercial use. So they're cooling the hydrostatic with an electric fan. So I'm guessing that the gentleman that, I don't know, I'm guessing that the gentleman who repowered it put in this electric fan to exhaust the hot air out of this box. If you look back here, he put back here on this front, he's sucking with the engine's flywheel cooling fan. He's sucking the air through this hydrostatic radiator to cool the hydrostatic. So he's sucking the air through this hydrostatic radiator that cools the hydrostatic oil, and then there's using this electric fan here to exhaust the heat out of this box. I don't know how the Kohler was. The Kohler was a much smaller engine. The Kohler was like a single cylinder 12 or 14 horse engine. And this is a twin cylinder 20 horse Honda. So I'm guessing it generates quite a bit more heat in there. But it doesn't really labor that hard. I mean, it's just driving this hydrostatically. I mean, he could have gotten away with a much smaller engine, just a single cylinder. More akin to what was in there. But maybe that's what the gentleman had on hand, or he had a hold of one, and that's what he decided to use. But it hardly labors at all, just powering this hydraulically. So yeah, should be an interesting project. And like I said, we'll just take it piece by piece, and I would clean up some of the electronics too. For instance, the electronics, you have a separate switch. Let me flip up the seat here. So what they have here is they have a toggle switch here that you flip on that kicks that cooling fan and the fuel pump on. So I would rewire this so that when you turn the key on, that all comes on. And then this is the ignition here. So this upper toggle is the ignition. If you don't flip that on, it doesn't start. That's how you stop the engine, shorting out the ignition. So I would rewire it so you don't need those two. And if need be, I would change the ignition switch in the dash. Because right now, the only thing that the ignition switch in the dash is doing is starting it. So there's an ignition switch up here. And all it's doing is cranking it, starting it. So that could be simplified. And the throttle, I'll show you the throttle on this thing too. See if I can get my gimbal to follow me around. So he mounted a lawnmower. He mounted a lawnmower throttle over here. See, this is just a cheap plastic lawnmower throttle here. So I don't know if I'll keep that and get a more heavy duty one. But he put a plate on here and mounted it. So you could do anything. There's a lot of different throttles like that. Or we could mount it back in the dash. I bet it used to be in here, see? I bet the throttle used to be in this slot. There's a slot here for a throttle. Yeah. And this, I don't know what that is for. That's not used. That's not used anymore. I don't know what that is. The choke is over on the side. So I don't know if he did. That's a rod, yeah. Yeah. I bet he put this rod over here. So whoever repowered this, they put the choke over here, which kind of, in a way, makes it easier because you can use your left hand to pull the choke and your right hand to start it. So that kind of makes sense, rather than having the ignition and the choke right next to each other. So yeah, that's going to be the next project, and we should have some fun with this. And how you tackle something, a bigger project like this, is you do it piece by piece. You focus on just one of the systems that you have to fix. So for instance, on this, I would totally just focus on the brakes. Get all the brakes working, get the handbrake working. So it's got drum brakes on the back. I don't think there's a brake on the front wheel. I think there's just drum brakes on the rear wheels. And there's lines going from the master cylinder to those. And I think there's also physical, there's like rod linkages for the park brake. I think the park brake handle pulls those with a physical linkage. So yeah, we'll do the brakes, and then we'll start messing with the wiring, or we'll pull the engine, we'll see. But the engine needs work big time, because it's leaking oil. Just from moving it around here, I get oil puddles. So that's what we'll do. That's the next project. So if I use anything in my videos and stuff, I'll throw the links in the description below the videos, and we'll go from there.